So cool. So now we have another theme, which I think will probably hit hard for some, and that theme is time. I know that a lot of people struggle with finding time to do the things that they really enjoy and also worrying about like how old they're getting and if they've missed their shot or whatever at making an impact on people with their music. So I've chosen a snippet from episode 3 from the very beginning of the podcast. And it's called Limited Time Maximum Results.
Oh, the
So
Wayback Machine.
yeah. Let's give it a listen.
Well, really, for me, it's as simple as just asking the question. I would say to myself, what is the biggest improvement that I can make in the studio or with my current track? Or where is the biggest skill that I need to learn? And then how can I learn that the fastest?
Cool. So my biggest takeaway from this snippet and from this podcast are Keith talks a lot about the 20%, putting in the 20% that's going to get you 80% of the results. And that's something that he talks about quite a bit. It's the 80-20 theory. So, and then the other thing that I really liked from the snippet was, what is the thing I should focus on? Like asking yourself, like, what do I really need to focus on to get that 80% of the results? And so that stood out to me because, and coming back to the idea of a community and getting feedback from people and having objective listeners and other ears kind of on the project. I mean, music really is a collaborative effort. And we live in a day and age when people are in their rooms producing music and we're all alone, and it's really, really important to reach out to others in that process because it's more fun that way. Collaboration is fun, and also it helps you to really know where to focus your time and energy. Like for me, I used to think it was all about the mix down, and if I only had this like multi-million-dollar world-class recording facility, I'd be able to finally achieve that sound that I was looking for. Well, since being part of FMM, I've found that that's not the case. And I've been getting feedback from listeners saying like, oh no, the mix sounds great. Like, but what you should focus on is actually here. So I've been focusing more on sound selection and transitions and the drums, especially the kick and the bass relationship. And so reaching out to the community has actually saved me and having community feedback and being part of that has saved me so much time and effort because I realized that I was focusing my energy in the wrong place. So like what I could do is that 20% of like, okay, well, let's chisel the drums and the bass. Let's really get that down. And that's going to do like 80% of the work, especially in dance music. So yeah. So my question for you is, what have you discovered recently, I suppose, is your 20% thing? Like, what do you want to
Hey, a
focus on?
recent one, yeah. So up until recently, I would have said arrangement was my obvious answer.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting that arrangement nailed as quickly as possible, and therefore spending the 20% time on that. But what I find is kind of now emerging is spending time on simplifying things at an earlier stage, and choosing the simpler sound elements that are really going to be the ones that carry the track.
Yeah, totally.
And what I always think of, there's a quote. I don't know who it's by, but I'm going to quote it. I know Keith loves quotes, so
He
it's an
does
FMM
love
podcast. And it was in a letter, and it was the start of a letter, and it said, "I apologise for the long letter. I didn't have time to write a shorter one." And that's it's the hard thing is simplifying something. That's
yeah.
anyone can throw sounds in and keep on throwing sounds in, and I did that for a long time, and then I kind of skewed on that and realized I just need to be finding the right sounds and
Mm-hmm.
the sounds that make sense, and the sounds that have the biggest impact on the track, and take away all that fluff. And so I'm doing my 80-20 at the stage of, let's just kind of see the wood for the trees, see what it is
Yeah.
that I can be using to really kind of build out that arrangement in the first place,
Right.
rather than just relying on throwing in extra things, making the use of what's there and what's good.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. That's a huge, I love that quote, by the way.
You know who it's from?
I have no idea. I have no idea who it's from, but I love the quote because it totally makes sense. I mean, it takes a lot to, it's very simple to build a loop and like have all these layers going and stuff. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a mistake I made too. Rookie moves, at the beginning. But yeah, keeping things simple. I mean, if you're, when you're at a rave and you're really listening to the music, there's 3 or 4 key elements going at any given time. So it really is great to just work with what you have. It's a great point. Yeah.
So the little piece of the podcast I picked up on, it's again Keith's talking about find your people who can support and advise you, and then asking the simple questions which will pay you back many times over. So here's the snippet.
A small amount of time asking the question now, a small amount of time figuring out what is your 80-20, what is your 4-64, can and usually does pay you back many, many times over. And if you are, perhaps feeling overwhelmed, if you look at your progress and think things aren't moving forward very quickly, they're not, or certainly not the speed that I would hope they would, or I don't have as much time as I want in the studio, or I feel I go in there and maybe I'm wasting some of it. Asking this question, discovering this 80-20 can be absolutely huge. And my biggest tip, unquestionably, is find your people. Find the people who can support you, who can guide you, who will listen to your music or who give you advice on the next step in your journey. Because the reality is, and it really is true, you don't know what you don't know. And having other people to guide you is just incredibly invaluable.
Okay, and my takeaway really there, the main takeaway is just not wasting time in the wrong areas, not overthinking things that really no one else hears, and getting that feedback so that you just not looking in the wrong place, getting steered into the right areas that I imagine more than one person, if they say the same thing, clearly that's a good place to look rather than what you may think is. So I've got a question for you, which is how much time do you now spend finalizing a track compared to before you were getting feedback?
So I would say the final touches of a track, I like to keep it at, so if my track is already at 70% finished, or I deem it to be 70% finished, I like to keep it like to 2 hours maximum before I bounce the track out. So like I go into my session with the intention of, okay, I'm bouncing this track out to share. And I feel like 2 hours is like a lot, but I am still slower than I would like to be at certain things. So I like to give myself that option. But I think that especially at that point, when you're like, okay, I'm bouncing the stems out, I'm bouncing the track out, it's best to work with a time limitation. In fact, I think working with time limitations is like one of the biggest, like mind-blowing things that I've learned also since being part of FMM is setting a timer. And when you have that timer, you eliminate your distractions. It's amazing what you can get done in that period of time.
Right. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. So the next snippet that I have chosen, also having to do with time, but on a larger scale. This is episode 4, and it was called Have You Left It Too Late to Succeed? So this one hits really hard. Let's take a listen to this snippet.
There is a huge amount of potential. It's just all about changing the way that you operate, changing your strategy, and believing as well. Casting aside these limiting beliefs, because that's all they are, and believing.
So my biggest takeaway from this is, this is a Keith quote that you will hear a lot, is if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. So really him speaking about changing your strategy, I think really hits, because A lot of people do work very, very hard at what they do, and perhaps maybe they work too hard, or they're focusing their energy in the wrong place or whatever. But like journaling, for instance, is a really good habit to get into, because then it helps you actually track patterns of things that you do when you're in the studio. And if you don't have an issue that you've picked out, then you can't find a solution. So you need to kind of figure out, like, what's holding you back? What do I need to change to actually get the results that I want? And then also casting aside limiting beliefs. I think that, I mean, that's what beliefs are. They're just beliefs, right? Yeah. So taking a look internally as to why you hold certain beliefs can really be a game changer. One of my beliefs is that my age is too old for a breakthrough. But whenever I say that I'm too old to my elderly relatives, they scoff, and rightly so. And then another belief that I've held for a while, or at least been scared of, is that my best work has passed me by. At this point in my life, I do not believe that for a second. I know in my heart of hearts that my best work is actually yet to come, because of all of the wonderful things that I'm learning. And especially since joining FMM, I've been like, okay, yeah, my best work is definitely still around the corner. I can feel it. But those are some of the things that I thought of immediately when this part of the podcast came up. But yeah, so I have a question for you. Is the topic of age and life stage and stuff like that, has that caused you any stress in your process?
Yeah, I mean, to some degree. I would say, first off, I've never considered my best work to be passed by. I've always thought it's in there. It'll still be released at some point. But I mean, I've certainly, that idea of having missed my chances, yes, that's cropped up plenty in the past. But I'm also realizing now, like, the older I get, every major age milestone, I've hit it, and I've always thought beforehand, when I hit, I started producing back in my teens, and I thought, when I hit 30, I thought, oh, that's it, I've left it too late. And then I hit 40 and thought the same thing, and you then look back and think, oh, 30 wasn't so bad. And the more that goes on, I can now look back and think, well, there's obviously a pattern there of worrying about hitting this particular age milestone, and it really doesn't make the slightest bit of difference. There really is no age. There's no cutoff.
Totally.
So I mean, I've kind of got past that now, and again, I look at all the producers, all the guys and girls I've looked up to over the years who have been making music, and they're legends now. They're still smashing it. They're still out there.
Yeah.
Older than I am now, which I'm getting on a bit, and they're still, if they can do it, then I'm there's no reason for me to believe otherwise. And then on top of that, you just look at the community in FMM and the spread of ages in there. That was a real eye opener for me. The fact that it's not just a small sort of like a 10-year age group where everyone is. It's a non-factor. Got 18 to 80. I don't know what the actual age limits are as far as members go, but
that's pretty close. It's pretty accurate. Yeah.
So I don't have another snippet really particularly to play here. I was the takeaways for me was still, Keith had said, "What you resist persists," and that I thought was a great quote. And that's kind of leaning into the inner bully thing, and the fact that it's always there. If you're resisting it, it's still there in the back of your mind. You still got that inner bully saying, "Oh, you should have done this earlier." So the question for you is, when did you first find it? At what age were you when you first had that thought that, oh, I've missed my chance?
Oh man, it's so funny, because as you were talking about, like, when you hit 30, you were like, oh, my time passed me. When you hit 40, my time passed me. When I was 28 is the first time that I was like, great, I'm too old, and I just remember thinking, like, my bags aren't going away. I'm not getting any younger, blah, just really really kind of bitter about it. And I just have to laugh at myself. Like, it's ridiculous. It's nearly a decade past that, and I'm still doing the same patterns. I definitely have a better skill set, and I'm definitely way better at what I do. And so that's exciting to measure the gain of that period of time, and not the gap of where I'm trying to go. But yeah, I was definitely 28 was the first time that I was like, I'm too old for this. I can't do it. And then 30, I felt like, I think 30 is a pretty big milestone, just like every decade kind of is, where I was just like, oh, great, I'm 30 now. Like, I'm, nothing. And I think, like, I mean, age is hard for everybody. And I think especially in the entertainment industry, because there's this expectation for looks and things like that, you know what, don't really matter. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, your age doesn't matter. The way you look doesn't matter. None of it matters. What matters is that you are impacting people with your music, and that you're making music that you enjoy, that you think sounds good, and you're just bringing your A game all the way. Like that's what matters. And so that's one thing that I have learned in the past couple of years, that there's no reason to rush anything, and to just keep getting better at what you're doing and keep your audience in mind. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but for me, I really like thinking about the patterns that I see when I play live, what people respond to. Look at your insights, like on Spotify, like what's the song that people are listening to and stuff, and just really paying attention to that kind of stuff. Because if your goal is to move people with your music, then nothing else really matters except for just getting really, really baller at what you do.
And of course, the other thing I think of with, particularly with electronic dance music, it's been around for a long time. So, you could easily start thinking, oh, I'm getting older now. It should be left to the youngsters to make. But I and of course I'm still very much influenced, as I've said plenty of times, by the early 90s rave stuff, which is my era. So there's I absolutely feel that I'm allowed to make that stuff, and
absolutely, you're an OG. I mean, that's the thing, is like, one of the things that I love the most about FMM is being able to interact with people who were there when the thing happened, when it first started. That to me is invaluable. Having that point of view is super, super important. And also, I mean, a lot of the rave scene today is literally just a recycling of what was happening when it first started. And so I think that the younger generation is paying homage without really like knowing that that's what they're doing a little bit. Yeah, I think it's important to respect the origin of the thing, and that means that you have like ownership of it in a way, which I think is really special.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah. So the next topic, also kind of on the point of time, the theme of time, is from episode 12, which is all gear, no idea. No idea in American. So this is on the topic of gear acquisition, and plugin acquisition, which is something that is really, really easy trap to get pulled into.
Ooh, yeah.
So I chose this snippet. Let's give it a listen.
Episode, I think the kind of core message that this always comes back to is that buying new gear often does more harm than good. Protect your time, protect your money, and only go after the stuff that you really need.
Yes. So my main takeaways from this are: acquiring gear and plugins is money and time intensive. Money is time and time is money. So if you don't have anything to show for the fancy gear that you acquire or the plugins or whatever, then it's kind of a waste of time. And it's also important. What I like about this clip is Keith talks about how look at the things that you already have. Like if you can somehow accomplish the same results with the tools that you already have, like anything that's in the box, or maybe you got some other plugins that you haven't yet played around with that are just kind of collecting dust, take a look and see what you can do with the tools you have. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't really think about because they get shiny object syndrome is they read the description of a plugin and they don't actually try like demoing the plugin before they buy it. And he says if you don't have time to even demo it before you buy it, then you probably don't have time to buy it or use it in the first place.
And of course, the descriptions are always going to be great every time.
Oh, the descriptions are great every time. They nail it. They make you, no matter what, they make you want that plugin. That like every time.
Yep.
They're like, this is the answer you need to make great music, and people believe it. Yeah. So yeah, my points are like it's a waste of time if you're not making music to acquire these things. I'm personally not much of a gear whore, but I know a lot of people who are, and that's mostly a financial choice. Yeah, I used to be,
well,
but
I was. Yeah,
like I said, but we all learned now, right? But I found that I can accomplish a hell of a lot with what I have. One of my friends was noticing like I had shared something I was working on my story, and it was all in the box plugins. And he was like, damn, all in the box? And I was like, yep, all in the box. Maybe I'll throw one or two plugins that I got for free. Also, not a lot of people know this, and I did not know this if you're at the beginning stages of producing, but there are so many free plugins out there that are amazing. So definitely like get into some kind of forum or group or join FMM to find all of these deals and these things that are out there that you may have not known otherwise.
Although that's a rabbit hole in itself.
It is a rabbit hole in itself. So put a timer on. Give yourself 30 minutes to do that, and then get back to making music. But yeah, it's true. So I have a question for you regarding plugins. Is there a time when you bought a plugin that you totally regretted it afterwards?
A time.
Okay, many times.
Almost every time. Every time, I think.
Every time.
No, seriously, I mean, to try and put a number on it, over 95% of plugins I've bought.
Wow.
I regret buying. I wasted my money. Same thing goes for sample packs. Just acquiring this stuff. And even the things that I still use now on a fairly regular basis, I don't need them. You know, I could if they were taken away, I wouldn't be too bothered. I would, you know, the stock plugins would work just as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's just those sales, the Black Friday sales, the Christmas sales, wherever they are. I used to get fished in all the time by those, and even beyond the sale periods, it was. You know, I could easily convince myself that, oh yeah, I think I need this. This is going to be something that works, and you know, genuinely thought that it was money well spent, and that it would, you know, be some kind of benefit, and it rarely was. And you know, once again, I'd stop using the thing. And you know, again, it's not just the plugins, the hardware gear. I've bought and sold stuff, so much stuff. I mean, eBay's made a fortune out of me. Just, you know, I'd buy things. And literally a week later, I'd just think, why did I get that? And I'd just sell it on, lose some money in the process. But I can think of, you know, I can count on one hand the plugins that I actually used, which I would like to keep. Half a hand even. You know, it's not that many.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, and your music is great. So it just goes to show that you don't really need that much. And it's always fun to look at what artists are using, like because some of them will divulge their secrets, and you're like, wow, really? Like that's actually way simpler than I would have guessed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've got nothing really to add to what you grabbed on the podcast there, and I think my question to you would be: so you've obviously managed to fine-tune your setup, and you enjoy just using a minimal system. So, I mean, the question I suppose is: do you take pride in having that, minimizing that system? You know, is keeping it sort of super compact and not buying extra plugins something you enjoy doing, or you know, something you enjoy not doing?
Yeah, I do actually. I do take pride in it. And I think prior to like kind of learning the FMM system, I would have been maybe a little sheepish about it, but mostly just because of that feeling of inferiority, like, oh, my productions aren't as good as other people's, and this is probably why, that this is why, because I don't have the stuff that they have and I don't know how to use it. And a lot of that's true. Like I have plugins that I use, but still don't really know how to use them. Like I know like maybe 10% of how to use them, and I'm always learning. And that's another trap of having a lot of plugins, is like if you don't understand how the plugin works, it's another
Yeah.
expenditure of time to learn how to use it, which can definitely pay off, of course. But if you're not actually making music, and somebody gave me a piece of advice that we can probably kind of end on, which is, if it sounds good, it's probably good. Of course, there's a lot to unbury there, because for me, it's like that's never been a satisfactory answer. Like I'm always searching for, like, no, there must be numbers and metrics that go with like how it can sound better. But there's some truth to that. And I think especially coming back to using reference tracks and ghost arrangements and things like that, if you are listening to it, and you're, part of being a musician is listening. That's actually like 99% of it is just listening.
Mm-hmm.
And as you do it more, you get better at listening. But if you're comparing it to your reference track and you're like, okay, that's almost there, or that's 80% there, or whatever, then it's probably good. And I think that there's a lot of truth in that, and it's not so much about the gear that you have and stuff like that. And when I play live, my setup is very minimal as well, and I do take pride in that as well, because I'm the one that's transporting everything and sending everything up myself. So yeah, I don't want a bunch of shit with me on stage. Like not even a little bit.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that, I mean, obviously there's the core stuff, like the core effects devices and things, which have been around forever, which are obviously important. And
yeah
if as time goes on, they'll be added. For instance, Ableton will add things that are needed or are popular, and I've bought third-party plugins, and then a couple of months later they've become part of the stock plugins in Ableton, because that's obviously something that people do find a use for a lot of the time. So I think it's that thing of all good things come to he who waits. You don't need to necessarily go trying to find something that you think might make a difference.
Absolutely.
They will appear as that in that stock DAW setup.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, there's certain external plugins that I use religiously, like FabFilter, because it is better at filtering things out than the stock plugin in Ableton. But I like using them in combination, like using a stock plugin, FabFilter, another something like that. You can kind of use it in combination. But another thing is with like Ableton Suite, if you have the Suite setup, like there are tons of free downloads and packs and all sorts of things that you can just get from the Ableton website at no additional cost. Of course, that also means that you need to learn how to use all of these things. So it's just a matter of, like, I think just seeing what other artists are using, especially in the box, and just really getting good at like the core things like EQ, compression, reverb, delay.
Yeah.
Like those things will get you that's your 80-20 right there. Like those things will get you 80% of the results.
Exactly. So that's it for this week. Once again, this has been a lot of fun, both digging into the early podcast episodes and sharing the discussion. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it gave you some food for thought on approaching time as a music producer.
If there's anything that you'd like to share, you can DM Keith on Instagram at IamKeithMills. The show notes are finishmoremusic.com/185. Take care. Until next time, happy music making.